Reborn in the winter of 1983, the first thing I did when I opened my eyes was go kiss that girl in the flowered cotton jacket. In my previous life, I thought her eyes were going blind, so I ran away. Later she got married, was beaten to death by her drunkard husband, and was hung from the old poplar tree behind the village. I drifted through half my life, went to prison, and raised children for 20 years, yet not one of them was mine. Before I died, I thought that if I could start over, I would die in this mountain gully, stay by her side, and never go anywhere. Heaven really gave me a chance. The day I went to find her, she was smiling at me with reddened eyes. Son, the daughter of the old Lin family is practically blind, and they still want 200 yuan in bride price from us. We're not taking this wife. The familiar voice drilled into my ears, and I suddenly opened my eyes. And that girl in the little flowered jacket who had been smiling shyly at me vanished in an instant. A heavy cotton quilt covered me, and beneath me was a heated Kong bed. Mother, Lin Xiu'er, muttered away while mending a shoe sole, while father, Tang He, limped as he nailed torn plastic sheeting over the window, the cold turning to frosty patterns on the plastic. My little sister hugged her gala and stared at me wide-eyed, while my little brother grinned foolishly with a runny nose. By my feet, the big black cat stretched lazily. Mom. Huh. Lin Xiu'er is the best girl in all the surrounding villages. Mother rubbed the needle against her hair, rolled her eyes, and said, her eyes are already blind, so what good is she no matter how good she is? I threw off the quilt and jumped to the floor. Amid my little sister's screams, I dragged her over and planted a hard kiss on her, then rubbed my little brother until he howled in tears. When I tried to grab the big black cat, I got a slap across the face. The room instantly erupted with a girl crying, children yelling, and the cat leaping about. Laughing loudly, I pulled on my black padded pants and blue padded jacket, shoved my feet into felt boots, and rushed outside. Spring festival had just passed, and the air still carried the smell of firecracker smoke. The sky was gloomy, the earth a vast white expanse of snow, and before and behind the village stretched the endless Greater Khingan Range. I remembered this day until the moment I died, the winter of 1983. Because the marriage fell through, I came down with a terrible fever and made a clean break with that girl. Later she got married, and before long she went blind. Whenever her man got drunk, he beat her, and within a few years she hanged herself from the old poplar tree behind the village. The daughter she gave birth to died of illness the following year as well, and was thrown into a ditch outside the village. As for me, I left home to make my way in the world, and when my parents passed away, I was in prison. After many ups and downs, I got married. My son and daughter both graduated from college, only for me to find out they weren't mine. At the moment of my sudden death, all I could see was that girl with swollen red eyes, wearing a little flowered jacket and smiling shyly at me. I thought, if I were given one more chance, I wouldn't leave. I'd stay there, die there, and live out my whole life in plain simplicity. That might well be a perfect life. Heaven really opened its eyes. I headed straight for the east end of the village, barged into her house, and yanked up the girl in the flowered jacket who was washing her face. Why are you here? Her mother ran out from the inner room in alarm. Auntie, I've come to see Xiao. Her younger brother stuck his head out from the inner room and shouted viciously, without 200 yuan, don't even think about marrying my sister. Get lost. The middle-aged woman kicked him back into the inner room with one foot, her face full of embarrassment. Child, there's a reason for this. I know. Uncle Lin's illness, Xiu'er's illness, leave them all to me. I gripped the collar of the girl's flowered jacket and stared fixedly at her swollen red eyes. The girl from my memory came vividly to life, even prettier than I remembered, with a fair face flushed with pink, graceful and gentle, looking very much like the later days with Xiaoqing. Xiu'er, as long as you'll marry me, okay? I said fiercely. Huh. Okay then. The girl looked timidly toward her mother. If you say yes, then it's yes. Even if the king of heaven himself came today, it wouldn't change a thing. Laughing loudly, I wrapped an arm around her waist and fiercely kissed her red lips. The girl struggled with all her might, and after breaking free, her face flushed so red it looked ready to drip blood. Xiu'er, Auntie, it's settled then. I had just turned to leave when her younger brother ran out and threw a snowball at me. I turned around, grabbed the little brat, and stuffed him head first into a snowdrift. Damn it, you're no good either. Back when your sister was being bullied, you acted like a deaf-mute and a blind man. Amid my little brother-in-law's wailing, I made my way to the back of the village. A dark-faced, burly man charged out carrying a four-tined pitchfork, and behind him an old man with a goatee hopped madly and cursed. Lichio, get your ass back here, or I'll break your legs and stuff them up your ass." When the dark-faced, burly man saw me, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He threw away the pitchfork, grabbed me around the waist, and swung me in a circle. "I knew you were fine." This was Lin Xiu'er, my childhood buddy, my brother through thick and thin. He'd damaged his brain from a fever as a child and was a bit slow, but before he died peacefully at 50, he split the money he'd saved over a lifetime into 2 parts, one left for the village and one entrusted to someone to pass on to me. A full 300,000. By then I hadn't seen him for more than 20 years, and even on his deathbed, he was still worried that I wasn't living well. Sadly, that money was transferred away without a trace by that selfish wife. I waved to the old man with the goatee. "Eighth Grandpa, Lin Xiu'er and I are heading out for a bit. We'll bring you back good wine and good food. Bring me back a dick, you hear?" Old Batu cursed, jumping madly. "Haha, then we'll bring you back a dick, 8th Grandpa." Old Batu froze. That little bastard used to call him Old Batuzi every time. Why was he calling him 8th Grandpa today? After the two of us left the village, Lin Xiu'er stuffed into my hands a jar full of oily fried rutabaga pickles, then dug a big basket out of a snowbank. Inside were an axe, a knife, ropes, and everything else we might need. His face was red with excitement. "Tanger, let's go bag a black bear and bring it back so that old dickhead can see it." Looking at his stubborn yet excited pancake-like face, I nearly burst into tears. In my previous life, he was obsessed with this hunting trip for bears that never happened, saying that if we'd hunted that bear back then, with my abilities, my life might have turned out differently. But in the end, I let down my old friend's expectations. In his eyes, I was the smartest person under heaven. We traveled through the mountains all day, and by the time it was nearly fully dark, the temperature had dropped to more than 30 below zero. We found a sheltered spot, dug out a snow pit, dragged over a dead tree, and lit a fire at the entrance. Lin Xiu'er took out several multi-grain steamed buns, broke them in half, stuffed them with pickles, and toasted them over the fire. I took a hard bite, and the fragrance of wheat and corn mixed with the salty, savory taste of the pickles, making me unable to help humming in pleasure. These days everyone was poor, but there were different kinds of poor. Though the Greater Khingan Range was considered backcountry, its valleys were broad, called grass meadows, with black soil layers 1 or 2 meters deep underground, and the reclaimed farmland was measured in xiang. The farmers didn't have spare cash, but they wouldn't starve to death, and that was really important. Besides, no matter how turbulent the outside world was, by the time the tide reached here, it had mostly dispersed. So even though it was already 83, the land wasn't divided until spring, and the production team was only half dissolved. Snow pit, bonfire, thick cotton-padded coat, felt boots, and dry grass spread underneath us. I slept especially soundly that night, completely rested through and through. Lin Xiu'er ducked in by the bonfire, exhaling cold air as he said, "Tanger, that den's by the river next to the old fallen pine. What do we do?" I rubbed my face and took a hard bite of my corn bun. "We do it head on. Damn, it'd be great if we had a gun." When we reached the riverbank, several dozen meters away, beneath an old fallen pine tree, there was a large pit-like hole, the trunk coated in white frost. This black bear had picked its winter den pretty casually. Nearby, we chopped down a few pine poles as thick as a calf, sharpening the front ends. Lin Xiu'er grabbed one and was about to charge up, but I yanked him back. "What the hell are you rushing for? Get ready. When the black bear sticks its head out, pin its neck." "Uh-huh." Lin Xiu'er nodded solemnly, his face fierce. I lit a string of firecrackers and threw them into the burrow, then grabbed a pine pole. The firecrackers exploded, waking the hibernating black bear, which roared and crawled out. Its pitch-black big head had just emerged when I let out a fierce roar and thrust the pine pole in at an angle. Lin Xiu'er howled and drove his pole in two. The two thick poles crossed and pinned the bear's head, and I grabbed the axe, about to bring it down on its skull. But when I saw that bear head the size of half a person and the faint crescent-shaped white fur below its neck, I let out a shrill cry. Damn, it's not a black bear. It's a brown bear. This thing is called a brown bear, twice the size of a black bear, easily weighing over 1,000 jin. With a savage roar, it flung one massive paw, and the two pine poles shattered like brittle crust. The huge brown bear leaped out, its paw carrying the sound of wind and thunder as it slapped toward me. Only one thought remained in my head. I'm totally screwed this time. Then someone gave me a hard yank, and I landed on my ass on the ground as the brown bear's strike missed. Its sharp claws swept past in front of me, and my face burned with pain. Lin Xiu'er dragged me backward by the collar, howling, "Tanger, run for your life." Splash. Both of us tumbled and scrambled into the icy river. The big river was frozen 1 or 2 meters thick, but the rushing current never froze year-round, steaming with white mist. The piercing cold made my whole body go rigid like I'd been electrocuted. Falling into a river at -30 or 40 degrees. How the hell was I supposed to escape with my life? Might as well die under the bear's claws. It'd be easier. Splash. The 1,000-gene brown bear jumped into the river after us too, roaring as it charged over. Holy shit. A deep growl came from behind me. Sharp wind sliced through the air, and with a ripping sound. My whole body went flying as if soaring through the clouds, then slammed into the snowy crust on the riverbank more than 10 meters away. Lin Xiu'er splashed ashore and lay down stiff as a board, still shouting, "Tang He, play dead." I was so scared I sprang up on the spot. Cut the crap about animals not eating the dead. This was a brown bear that had hibernated for 3 or 4 months and was starving. A soft, tender, springy corpse of just over 100 gene would only fill it a third full at most. The brown bear leaped up and bit into Lin Xiu'er's belly, tearing and shaking its head. Torn cotton batting flew everywhere, and Lin Xiu'er was flung more than 20 meters like a broken doll. The brown bear shook its head, its wet fur hanging over its eyes like a curtain. I rolled over to the big basket, picked up the axe, and hurled it, smashing it into the bear's back. The brown bear turned around and reared up, pawing at the frozen long fur in front of its eyes as it lunged at me. I picked up a pine pole, braced one end against the ground, and leveled it at its chest like a spear against cavalry. Boom. The brown bear crashed into it, furiously swinging both paws as it lunged forward. The pine pole as thick as an arm bent with a creak, then in my despair sprang straight again, and with a wet thunk stabbed deep into the crescent-shaped white fur beneath its neck. The brown bear's huge head was pressing right against mine, its gaping bloody jaws swallowing half my head. Thud! The 1,000-gene brown bear crashed down on top of me and pinned me into the snow. The stench hit my nose, every bone in my body crackled, and my vision kept going dark. Tang He, don't die? Lin Xiu'er's wailing brought me back. Looking at his filthy face streaked with tears and snot, with drool even dripping onto my face, I hugged him hard. Damn, I really came back. I hugged Lin Xiu'er and cried and shouted. Only now was I sure this wasn't a dream. We really came back. Tang He, we're gonna freeze to death. It's over -30 degrees, and icicles are hanging off our cotton jackets. The cotton stuffing on Lin Xiu'er's chest had been gouged out, and the area was black and blue. Good thing he was wearing thick winter clothes, and they were soaked through. Otherwise, that bite probably would have ripped out his heart and lungs. Hurry, dig a snow shelter, and start a fire. Shivering, I stripped off my soaked, frozen cotton jacket and went to drag over some dead wood. The freezing wind cut like knives, and with my body all wet, it felt like needles stabbing me. Lin Xiu'er was so cold his face had turned green. The two of us, trembling, piled thin branches and dead leaves together. I reached for the matches, and splash, water poured out of the matchbox. We're screwed. Heaven gave me one more chance. I didn't die because of my obsession with hunting a bear, only to freeze to death instead. Lin Xiu'er, to see you again, to see Xiu'er again. How wonderful. Tang He, I'm cold. I'm cold too. In my days, that harsh, selfish face floated before me, those lips opening and closing non-stop, condemning my worthless life. The child isn't even mine. It's all my fault. But dear God, please don't let me go back. Dying here in this dream would be just fine. Whoosh. Flames surged up and swallowed that face. A pair of big hands grabbed icy snow and rubbed me down hard all over, not even sparing my dick. Lin Xiu'er and I were both stark naked except for a big fur coat, huddling by the fire. A white-haired old man propped up the deadwood with stones, and the fire instantly blazed higher. Not far away, a huge Mongolian mastiff and an ugly black and yellow striped dog were tearing at the brown bear with the pine pole stuck through its chest. The old man pulled out his hunting knife and gutted the bear, first cutting out the gallbladder and tying it off tight, then taking out the liver and intestines to feed the dogs, and slicing off a few rich rib cuts, skewering them, and setting them by the fire to roast. What family's young buck are you, daring to come wait in a blind and hunt bears with nothing but an axe? The old man asked in a hoarse voice. Won't you village, Tang He, Lin Xiu'er, the youngest son of the Xiaotang family. The fool kid from old Bada's family, huh? You've got some damn nerve. Sir, which family are you from? Shandong village, Qinyi. I froze for a moment. Qin Dabangzi. That's the damn protagonist's nickname. The old man handed over some bear meat roasted till it was sizzling with fat. Hurry up and eat while it's hot. or you'll die before your clothes dry. Du Liqiu and I wolfed down the bear meat. Qin Debangzi scooped up white, ice crystal-like packed snow into a pot to boil water. After swallowing several skewers of bear meat and drinking a few mouthfuls of hot water, the two of us, who had been shivering uncontrollably just moments ago, were sweating from the tops of our heads. Two young men of 18 or 19. Once the fire warmed them and they got some bear meat in their mouths, they came back to life at once. Gesturing animatedly, Du Liqiu talked about the bear hunt, then threw open the fur coat and stood up naked. The black and blue marks on his chest where the bear had bitten him a horrifying sight. Qin Debangzi listened with waves of alarm. These two little fools were completely risking their lives. They didn't even have a gun, and they still dared hunt a man-eating bear. You young idiots really are meeting the king of hell without knowing whether you're dead or alive. Only then did I feel a burning pain along my ribs. Lowering my head, I saw that the brown bear's swipe had struck through my thick cotton jacket and left my ribs a bloody mess. Luckily, it didn't hurt to breathe, so my ribs weren't broken. Small mercy in a big misfortune. The cotton jacket was almost dry. Du Liqiu's jacket crackled by the fire. Who knew how many lice were popping from the heat, giving off a strangely fragrant smell. We followed old Qin Bangzi forward and skinned and butchered the 7 or 800-pound brown bear. My eyes kept drifting to the pouch at his waist. Old Qin Bangzi directly tossed the bag to me. Good guts. Bear bile develops when the bear is enraged. It's even better than copper bile. Don't sell it for less than 500 yuan. I happily took it. I'm not selling it. I'm using it to treat my wife's eyes. Old Qin Bangzi let out a surprised sound and gave me a long, deep look, then silently went back to butchering the bear meat. He cut off the bear's nose and tongue. These are mine. I need to treat my old lady's illness too. I quickly said, Master Qin, keep whatever you need. I won't say a word against it. Old Qin Bangzi gave a half smile. What? So this bear bile is mine too? I immediately clutched the bag tight. No way, this is for treating my wife's illness. Haha, a man who knows how to cherish his wife can't be all bad. Give me the hide. You don't know how to handle it. And give me 100 jin of meat. No problem, right? Du Liqiu stiffened his neck and was just about to speak when I kicked him hard and shouted, Master Qin is absolutely right. Old Qin Bangzi gave me a deep look and said with a smile, Quite generous, huh? Too bad about your dad's leg. I sighed. My dad had no choice either. The three of us loaded the half-frozen bear meat onto the sled, and the two dogs helped drag it as we slowly made our way through the snow back toward the village. We only split up when we reached the village entrance. As soon as old Qin Bangzi left, Du Liqiu roared indignantly. We were the ones who killed this bear, so why does he get such a big share? I said quietly, because those are the rules. The mountains have their own rules. Deep in the old forest, you greet people with a smile and know how to share. Hogging everything for yourself is a major taboo. I stuffed a big basket full of bear meat and said to Du Liqiu, Liqiu, I need the bear bile and bear paws, so I'll give you more meat. Du Liqiu said as he moved the meat. If we take this meat back, that old bastard will be grinning from ear to ear. I dragged back more than 200 jin of bear meat, and my family was shocked. My younger sister and younger brother stared at the plump, rosy bear meat, their eyes shining. My father, Tang He, didn't say a word. With his dry tobacco pipe clenched in his mouth, forgetting to light it and just chewing on it directly. My mother, Lin Xiu'er, paced around in circles, grabbed her sewing board without even having time to pull out the needle, and smacked me all over with it. I howled from the beating, but with my thick cotton jacket on, it didn't hurt that much. Still, I just wanted Mom to beat me a little longer. Mother threw down the sewing board, grabbed my ear, and cursed angrily. So you disappeared for 3 days just for this? How big must that bear have been? What would we have done if you died? But I didn't die, did I? The family had to have some meat and fat. Mom, stop hitting me, it hurts. Mother let go and shot father a fierce glare before dragging him into the inner room. Faintly, I heard a burst of pounding sounds. My younger sister and brother came over with flattering looks on their faces. My little brother said, Second brother, we can eat meat tonight, right? Looking at my young, innocent little sister and my simple, chubby little brother, I just couldn't reconcile them with the cold, resentful faces from my memory. It's all my damn fault. My younger sister Tang Li was excellent at math. In the 1990s, she could have gotten into a top university. My younger brother Tang Shu was a bit slow at studying, but he was good at reading people and had very high emotional intelligence. But I held them both back, and they lived mediocre lives for their entire lifetimes. Tang He's heart ached, but the smile on his face grew wider. He crooked a finger and said, Little sister, come here, let your brother kiss you. Little brother, come here. Let your brother rub your head. And tonight, the cat sleeps in my bed. The black cat, who had been stretching its neck and sniffing the bear meat, jerked its head around in surprise and stared at Tang He. The hell? What does this have to do with me? Tang Li reluctantly stepped forward and brought her face close, letting Tang He plant a hard kiss on it. Tang Shu wore a mournful, long face. Getting his scalp rubbed really hurt. On the Kong stove at home was a large 12 Cuan pot, and on the burner was a small 8 Cuan pot. The fatty brown bear lard meat was cut into small pieces and simmered with a small amount of water. At first there was a nasty fishy rank smell, but as the moisture cooked away and the fat rendered out, making a sizzling bubbling sound, all that remained was the scorched aroma of the oil. Lin Xiu'er, beaming with joy, rendered the oil, deftly kneaded the dough, directed Tang Dashan to scoop out the pickled cabbage and chop the filling, and sent several children off to fetch Old Fan and Xiao Zheng and his wife, as well as Old Eight-Head and his son to come over for dinner. This place was full of pioneer settlers, without that many clan relatives. People who got along well were even closer than kin. In those days, getting something tasty wasn't easy, so whenever there was good food, they would always invite the people closest to them to come eat and drink together, and those invited didn't stand on ceremony either. Just coming empty-handed was fine. After all, theirs was the kind of friendship forged by climbing over ice and lying in snow together, huddling together for warmth. Old Fan and Old Eight-Head were first-generation pioneers, while Tang Dashan was second generation, and Tang He belonged to the third generation. Xiao Zheng's name was Zheng Jingwei. He was the son-in-law of Old Fan, the village chief, and Tang He was supposed to call him second aunt's husband, but since they weren't far apart in age, they were usually informal with each other. Back then he had served as a soldier north of the grasslands, and had even gone down south and fought monkeys with real weapons for 2 months. He was a tough man who had seen blood and seen the world, and later he was village chief for many years. He was extremely close with their family, and that relationship lasted all the way until Tang He's sudden death. Few people make for an easy meal, many people make for quick work, and soon the dumplings were all wrapped. In the Northeast, even a table set with 18 dishes couldn't compare to dumplings wrapped by your own family. Dumplings stuffed with cracklings and pickled cabbage. Especially with the cracklings rendered from the big brown bear Tang He had hunted himself, were exceptionally impressive. Dumplings go with liquor. The more you drink, the more there seems to be. Sprinkle salt over the cracklings. And with one bite your mouth fills with oil. Scallions and pickled cabbage hearts dipped in soybean paste were refreshing and great with drinks. Once the drinking got lively, Xiao Zheng insisted on stewing the 4 bear paws Tang He had brought back too, to taste what bear paw was like, but his wife slapped him awake with a few smacks. When the last cup of liquor was poured, Old Fan, his face flushed red, said, "Little Tang, when spring comes our production team is going to disband, and the cattle, horses, and fields will all be assigned by drawing lots." Tang Dajuan smiled and poured Old Fan another half cup of liquor, his face equally red as he said, "Uncle Fan, let's not say anything more. Whatever we draw is what we get, and we'll just partner up and work it. No matter what, nobody's going to starve to death. That's pretty good already." With those words from you, my heart feels settled. In this damn day and age, wasn't the production team just fine? Why the hell does it have to be dissolved for household contracting? Zheng Jingwei rolled his eyes and said, "Dad, that's your old way of thinking. In a place like ours that doesn't even produce the 5 grains, they still insist on planting wheat. And an acre doesn't even yield 200 gene. We're only getting by because we have a lot of land. If we had any less, we'd starve to death after handing over the state grain quota. Better to divide up the land early, plant whatever you want. No matter what, it'd be better than now." Old Fan slammed his cup down and cursed angrily. "You ungrateful bastard. If not for the great leadership, you'd all have fucking starved to death long ago. It's only been a few years since they died, and already you want to break up and call it quits." The father-in-law and son-in-law nearly came to blows at the dinner table. Everyone at the table was stopping and persuading them, and Old Eight-Head's hat was even knocked off, leaving his shiny bald head exposed as he grabbed this one and held back that one. Meanwhile, the old lady and her daughter Fan Xiujuan looked completely calm and even ate a few more dumplings. Du Liqiu was even less polite, pulling out lunchboxes and stuffing 2 of them completely full. And he even said righteously that the old damn fool only knew how to boil food in water, and it tasted awful. Old Eighth Head was so furious he kicked Tang He several times. It was all his son's fault for calling him an old damn fool. By seniority based on the elders' relationship, Tang He should even call Du Liqiu little uncle. After all the commotion, they finally saw everyone off. Tang He went to sleep in the small room, while little sister and little brother slept on the warm head of the Kong. Tang He slept at the foot of the Kong, and that big black cat crawled into the quilt, curling up between his legs with its chin resting on his leg. He had been sleeping soundly, but Tang He had eaten and drunk his fill, and all he could think about was the girl in the floral padded jacket. A 19-year-old young man was restless every moment, and then the black cat suddenly sprang up to catch a mouse. With one bite, it nearly crippled Tang He. Tang He kicked the black cat out with one foot, and little brother quickly dragged it into his own quilt, giggling foolishly as if he'd gotten some huge bargain. When Tang He woke up naturally, the sun was already high in the sky. He threw on some clothes and went out, patting the big snow pile in the yard with satisfaction. Frozen inside were 4 bear paws, and there was also leftover bear meat. Until the snow melted, the family wouldn't be short of rich food. Carrying the bear gallbladder and hauling over 100 gene of bear meat on a sled, Tang He headed straight to Lin Xiu'er's house. When Lin Xiu'er, wearing her floral padded jacket, saw Tang He, she immediately thought of how he had held her and kissed her the day before yesterday. Her pretty face instantly flushed red with lymph, and she hurriedly hid in the inner room. Lin's mother, Zhang Xiuquan, came up to greet him. The sturdy, tiger-headed little brother-in-law had just shown himself when Tang He grabbed the useless little brother-in-law and flipped him upside down, then stuck him into the snow pile again and stuffed the bear gallbladder, round like a little rubber ball, into Zhang Xiuquan's hand. "Auntie, take this bear gallbladder to that old medicine mixer to make some medicine and treat my wife's eyes. And please give me a few more days to scrape together some money so my uncle can go to I-City for a look. It can't go on like this, him staying muddle-headed all the time." Zhang Xiuquan looked at the bear gallbladder in her hand, round like a ball, as big as 2 fists and golden in color, and was instantly dumbfounded. If this thing were sold in town, it would fetch at least 200 or 300 yuan, right? And there was also that huge pile of plump bear meat. How long would it take to finish eating all that? "Auntie, your family still has a wild boar stomach, right?" "Ah, yes, we do, it's frozen. You want to eat it? I'll cook it for you." Zhang Xiuquan was so delighted her eyes nearly disappeared as she quickly dug out a fairly large wild boar stomach from the snow pile. "Auntie, don't bother. I'm taking it to give to someone." Zhang Xiuquan hurriedly took out another cloth bag to pack it up properly. Looking again at this handsome young man, the more she looked, the more she liked him. If the family hadn't had no other choice, who would be willing to force someone with a bride price? Brother, our grandma is here. She's taking all the meat from the house away. It's piled so high on the bicycle. She even took the bear paws you hid, and now she wants the bear gallbladder from you too." The chubby child Tang Shu ran over from outside the gate, waving his hands and shouting. As soon as Zhang Xiuquan heard this, a troubled look immediately appeared on her face. She let out a deep sigh and turned to return the bear gallbladder to Tang He. Tang He quickly stopped her and let out a cold laugh. In his previous life, this monstrous grandma was feared by everyone, hated by gods, and loathed by Buddha, a complete old shrew. Back then, Tang Dashan had gotten into a technical secondary school. In those days, technical secondary school meant the state not only covered the costs but even gave you money. But this old woman threw herself on the ground and absolutely refused to let him go, insisting he stay home to work. And once he stayed, it was for a lifetime, facing the black soil with his back to the sky. Why was Tang Dashan lame in that leg? It was because of this grandma. To curry favor with her eldest daughter-in-law, she forced her younger son to go hunting in the mountains without much preparation. He got his leg bitten and broken by a wild boar, and because there was no money for treatment, he was left disabled. After that, all Tang Dashan got was a comforting remark calling him useless. As for everything else, it's even less worth mentioning. The reason was that she exhausted the family's meager savings and Tang Dajuan's future, using gifts and connections to arrange jobs for her eldest son at the town plywood factory and for her eldest daughter-in-law at the chopstick factory. They both had urban household registration, lived on state grain rations, and drew wages. A biological mother being this snobbish and biased was really something else. But now, this awful old woman probably doesn't know what it means to cast aside all decency and enjoy a shameless life. The sinister grin on Tang He's face frightened Zhang Xiuquan badly, and she quickly pointed at him and said, "Child, Taichish, that is your grandmother." Lin Xiu'er, wearing a flowered padded jacket, had red, swollen eyes. Holding the bawling brat in her arms as she stood at the doorway looking at Tang He worriedly. That gentle, pretty face of hers was full of concern. Tang He burst out laughing and ignored his mother-in-law. Instead, He yanked the brat out of Lin Xiu'er's arms and cursed him for not being manly, then tossed him back into the snowdrift and brazenly wrapped an arm around Lin Xiu'er and fiercely kissed her little mouth. If I don't make this old woman submit completely today, then who knows how much grievance Xiu'er and I will suffer in the future. As Tang He spoke, he cupped Lin Xiu'er's little face and said seriously, Xiu'er, I promise, from now on, if you're with me, you won't suffer the slightest grievance. The two of us will live this whole life safely and peacefully, without quarrels or trouble. After Tang He finished speaking, he turned and strode away. Lin Xiu'er's legs immediately went a little weak. In this day and age, was there any sweeter love talk than that? The chubby boy trotted after him, shouting, Second brother, you're awesome. Lin Xiu'er held onto the doorframe, ignoring her younger brother's wailing with snow all over his face and head. Her legs had gone so weak that she almost wished she could bear Tang He a child right now. Inside the house, a man with a large frame but a very frail body came out supporting himself against the wall. Zhang Xiuquan said anxiously, Old Lin, this matter, what do you think about this matter? Lin Jiqiang waved his hand and said, Old woman, leave it alone. This kid Xiao Tang is a real man, and Xiu'er has taken a liking to him. I like him too. If not for you, I would have been gone long ago. It's no big damn deal. Lying in bed for a month or so would have been enough. As Lin Jiqiang spoke, he twisted up a dry tobacco cigarette, stuffed it into his mouth, lit it, and muttered, Since this matter can be settled, then no matter when, no matter what outrageous thing Xiao Tang does, our whole family has to stand on his side. Old woman, give that little brat a beating. This brat doesn't know his place and needs a lesson. Zhang Xiuquan immediately grabbed a broom and dragged the brat over, then started whipping him. Sis, help. Lin Xiu'er was currently immersed in fantasies of getting pregnant on the spot, so how could she care about her younger brother's cries for help? She paid no attention at all. Tang He darted home in a flash. There was an old woman who looked vigorous and spry yet wore a harsh expression, standing in front of a sturdy 28-inch bicycle. Piled high on the front crossbar and rear rack was bear meat, and 4 bear paws were tied with rope and hanging from the handlebars. It was impressive enough that an old woman like her could even push it. When the old woman saw Tang He return, she immediately stepped forward, held out a hand, and shouted, You damned plague bringer. She was willing to give away that precious bear gallbladder to some good-for-nothing loser. Hand it over. Give it to me. Tang He rolled his eyes and ignored her, then kicked the bicycle over with one foot. Didn't you say you were living with my uncle? Didn't you say that if you ever set foot in my house in this lifetime, you'd be a son of a bitch? You're my grandma, so I won't hold those harsh words against you. Since you've come to the house, we'll treat you to good food and drink. But if you want to carry things away, no way. Ah yeah, you little bastard, you've grown some backbone, have you? I really have grown some backbone, setting up my own household, shutting the door, and living my own life. I can support the whole family, young and old, and provide for them. That's what ability is. Old lady, don't worry. My family, even if we have to beg in this lifetime, won't beg at your doorstep. The more Tang He spoke, the angrier he became. If this old lady hadn't caused so much trouble, this family wouldn't have been ruined to such an extent. Why had his mother become so frail? And why was his father, once a man as tough as iron, dragging around a disabled body? Not all parents deserve to be parents. Tang He couldn't help saying viciously, Old lady, you'd better remember this. The sins you commit today are the bitter fruit you'll bear tomorrow. You will die in a pile of your own piss and shit. What Tang He said was a statement of fact. In his previous life, after the old lady had a stroke, no one took care of her. She was dumped in a small shabby room and really did die in a pile of her own piss and shit. But she was not worthy of pity. The old lady was instantly furious, but seeing Tang He's tall build, she didn't dare make a move, so she resorted to the skill rural old women were best at, throwing a fit. The old lady charged straight to the doorway, sat down on the ground, slapped her thighs, yanked her hair, crying and yelling. Among all the curses she spewed, wishing this whole family would drop dead of plague was the nicest of them. Morality, to shameless people, weighs less than a feather. But the more decent and self-respecting someone is, the more they suffer for it, whether they're right or wrong. Tang He's family were clearly people who cared about their dignity. Tang Dashan and Lin Xiu'er, the couple, instantly turned green in the face, and even the 2 children, Tang Li and Tang Shu, were so angry their little faces turned red, yet they were at a loss. They couldn't exactly beat up an old lady in the street. Tang He, however, burst out laughing. He could finally learn something from the young people of his previous life. what it meant to cast aside manners and enjoy a life without scruples. Tang He ran to the side room, brought out the family's only brass basin, grabbed a rolling pin, and started banging loudly on the basin. And for a time, the shouting and the clanging echoed through the whole village. In the freezing weather, everyone was cooped up at home bored stiff. Now that there was excitement, the several hundred villagers swarmed over as fast as rockets. And the old lady slapped her thighs and cursed with even more vigor. Tang He, however, kept banging on the brass basin, then knocked out a few quick beats, followed by another pause, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Clang clang, clang clang, neighbors left and right. Come take a look, spread the word, and have a talk. Listen while I tell you the full story of the Tang family's little mess. Tang He banged the brass basin 3 more times, and everyone's eyes lit up at once. Oh wow, this kid just hunted a bear, and now he started doing Quaibon too? If he sang in a Rinzuan next, wouldn't that be even livelier? Clang clang, clang clang. The old madam of the Tang family has a festering sore in her heart. The eldest son was treated like a cowherd who married the 7th fairy, while the poor younger son was like a child with no parents. He got into a good school, but wasn't allowed to attend, all because they were busy getting the eldest son a wife. And that wasn't even the worst of it. What came later was the real disaster. By the Tang River, Tang He was banging a copper basin and jumping around like some spirit medium, dancing and shouting at the same time. Tang Dashin and the others were too embarrassed to watch, but Tang He didn't care. Didn't young people in later generations all say it? If I'm not embarrassed, then the embarrassed ones are other people. The old lady was so furious she got up to claw at him, but how could she keep up with the young man's nimble legs? In one breath, Tang He sang out all the grievances his parents and their younger generation had suffered, and the villagers around them kept cheering nonstop. These days, never mind artistry. If it's catchy, easy to sing, and lively, then that's the greatest entertainment. Before long, it would probably spread through the whole town. With such a catchy tune being passed around by everyone, who would dare say their family was unfilial? Tang He made a tiger-like leap and dodged the old lady's pouncing blows, but she ended up diving headfirst onto the ground, slapping the snowy ground and yelling that her grandson was beating his grandmother. How unfilial. Tang He shot a fierce glare at his little sister and little brother, the 2 children, who had originally been full of admiration. Tang Li still looked confused, but Tang Shu, the little chubby boy, instantly got it. He grabbed Tang Dashin's leg and started crying, and Tang Li also caught on, throwing her arms around Li Xiu'er and starting to wail. Listening to her brother's doggerel, she had to struggle hard not to laugh out loud. Tang He paid no attention at all to the old lady sitting on the ground howling. Like I'd follow your rhythm. If I'm going to cut, of course I'll cut at your favorite one. Tang He pointed outside the crowd, and everyone's eyes swished over in unison. And the expressions on a middle-aged man and woman's faces changed instantly. Tang He burst out laughing and struck the copper basin. Bang bang. Bang bang. My dear uncle and aunt, think this over carefully. Do you want me to go sing this at the entrance to your work unit? In the era of the planned economy and state-owned enterprises, everyone lived within a small social circle and still cared somewhat about saving face. Now that they'd run into someone like Tang He, who had completely thrown shame to the wind, no matter how arrogant they were, today they still had to bow their heads and give in. Tang Dalin and his wife looked green in the face, turned around with their bicycles, and left. The old lady jumped up and tried to claw at Tang He again. But Tang He smashed the dented copper basin hard onto the ground and roared viciously. Grandma, do you believe that? If I go perform this act again at the entrance to the Forestry Bureau, your precious eldest grandson will lose his job immediately. The old lady was instantly cowed. Her eldest grandson was the apple of her eye. And after great effort and spending quite a bit of money, they'd finally found him a job stoking boilers. If he really lost that job, he'd also lose his match. Don't laugh at a boiler stoking job. That was still a formal position in the forestry system, not something ordinary people could get. In those days, after all, the job inheritance system was still in place. The old lady resentfully pushed her bicycle and was just about to leave when Tang He gave her one final blow in an especially loud voice. Grandma, if you can't make it at my eldest uncle's house, come live at mine. I'll support you in your old age. You plague-ridden little bastard. Even if I starve to death outside, I still won't need you to support me in old age. Haha, that's a promise then. Once shit's been squeezed out, you don't sit back down on it. With venomous hatred so deep she wished she could wipe out his whole family, the old lady pedaled after her eldest son. And before she had even left the village, They could already hear her loudly shouting about how she was going to destroy her younger son's family. That awful family was gone, but the villagers' mood for watching the spectacle hadn't faded, especially since most of them were old women. Not afraid of the cold, they stood there with their hands tucked in their sleeves, sniffling back their snot, chattering away in discussion. What Tang He did was satisfying, but in the end, it still went against traditional morality, so people would inevitably gossip about it later. Especially when the topic turned to Tang He's marriage prospects. Some people even gloated and said, "I'm afraid this bare gallbladder will have been given away for nothing." The way Lin Xiu'er was showing off really rubbed people the wrong way. Tang He and Lin Xiu'er's expressions also turned ugly. Rumors are like knives, killing without drawing blood. I'm afraid the Lin family won't be able to bear this humiliation. Just then, the crowd behind suddenly fell silent, and then a path opened up. Lin Xiu'er was supporting Lin Montong, with a gloomy-faced Lin Xiu'er beside them, and behind them followed the brat rubbing his butt as he walked. The family of four passed through the crowd like this, and came to stand in front of the Tang family. Lin Montong reached out and tightly grasped Tang He's hands. One was physically weak, one had a crippled leg, but when those two pairs of hands clasped together, they felt as heavy as mountains. Lin Montong said in a deep voice, "Brother Tang, our family has waited so long and still didn't see you come to discuss the marriage. I couldn't wait any longer, so I came myself. Don't look down on our family." Tang He burst into hearty laughter with an unprecedented sense of relief. As long as the kids are willing, what more is there for us to say? Come on, let's go inside and have a drink. Let's set a date before Jingzha. The two families went inside in great cheer. Some people who were on especially good terms and close with them, like the Old Fan family, Old Badu, Lu Laolu, Wang Lauer and others, also followed them in. The rest of the villagers excitedly talked about what had happened today, going back in little groups to continue the gossip. In this bitterly cold weather, this was one of the few amusements, and Tang He was now practically treated like the star of the whole village. Amid the lively atmosphere, Tang He looked at Lin Xiu'er shrinking behind Lin Montong. Her pretty face flushed red with shyness, and his heart itched unbearably. If anyone had the chance to see the girl they had once secretly adored again, and while discussing marriage at that, I'm afraid no one could stay calm. Hearing that the date was about to be set, Tang He immediately stepped forward and said, "Dad, Mom, Uncle, Annie, how about picking an auspicious day in the first lunar month next year? Waiting one more year won't make much difference. Give me a year to straighten things out at home and earn some more money. Then build another house behind my family's place. While you're still in good health, the two of us can enjoy a few years of married life on our own." As Tang He spoke, right in front of everyone, he directly pulled Lin Xiu'er out. Lin Xiu'er let out a flustered cry and turned to look at her parents. But Tang He half embraced her and dragged her out quite forcefully. This was no different from acting like a hooligan. In those days, there was still the crime of hooliganism. But Lin Xiu'er smiled so hard her eyes were nearly shut. If they didn't live together, there'd be no mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict. For her own daughter, that would be a good life. Lin Xiu'er's expression, however, didn't look too good. Before she, the mother-in-law, had even gotten the chance to assert herself, her son had already struck her head-on with a blow. The daughter-in-law hadn't even entered the family yet, and already she was kicking her husband's parents aside. Tang He pulled Lin Xiu'er into the storage room. Shyly, she gave his chest a light tap and said, "Teach, this isn't even marriage yet, and you're already thinking about splitting the family up. What will people think of me? Oh, come on. Living in front and back courtyards. How can that really be called splitting the family? My parents are still quick and capable, and they don't need us hovering in front of them. It's only when they can no longer move that it'll be our time to show filial devotion." But Lin Xiu'er could feel that this man was thinking of her, and her heart felt sweet. And by the time she reacted, a paw had already slipped into her flowered cotton jacket, feeling along her slender waist. Lin Xiu'er's pretty face flushed crimson with shame. She wanted to struggle, but Tang He was holding her tightly. "What are you hiding for? I only touched your waist. I didn't touch anywhere else." Tang He's hand gently caressed back and forth over that soft, supple waist and lower belly. It felt just like a dream. He had missed far too much in his previous life. "Why you? Stop touching me. It feels awful." "What feels awful? Let your brother give you a kiss." There was plenty of bear meat at home, stewed in a huge pot. Then add potatoes, dried green beans, dried eggplant, napa cabbage, and vermicelli, a big glistening pot of it. This was Northeast China's most famous winter mixed stew. Plus the indispensable vegetables for dipping in sauce. It was absolutely presentable, second only to yesterday's dumpling making in terms of spread. Tang He originally didn't like eating these dried vegetables, because vegetables dried and stewed without enough fat felt scratchy in the throat. Now there was plenty of fat, and the dried vegetables had soaked up all the broth and grease, making them incredibly fragrant. But suddenly taking in so much rich food had another consequence too. It would more or less cause diarrhea. Tang Shu, that chubby kid, had it the worst. Who told him to be so greedy? He was obviously stuffed up to his neck, but after running outside for a lap, bouncing around a bit, he still managed to wolf down a few more bites. As a result, he had the runs all night, and his butt nearly froze off. Even the big black cat at home kept him company for most of the night while he pooped. Diarrhea or not, the people from several families had all been nourished by the rich food, their little faces glowing with health. Only Tang He was having a rough time. His mother would glare daggers at him every time she looked at him, as if her eyeballs were about to fly out. Tang He savored the wonderful feeling of kissing Lin Xiu'er's snowy, white belly earlier and pretended not to notice. In this era, people still adhered to the suppressive style of education passed down for thousands of years, that only the rod produces a filial son was the ultimate truth. Especially with his mother, there was even less reasoning to be had. Endure it, and it would pass. Around just before noon, Tang He loaded 50 gene of bear meat, for bear paws, and a fairly large wild boar stomach onto a sled, and went out the door amid Li Xiu'er's curses of spendthrift brat. Heading all the way toward the town 5 kilometers away, Tang He was going to deliver gifts. Whether he would be able to live in clover from now on depended on this trip. Timing it for the noon meal, Tang He arrived in front of the few apartment buildings in town. Being able to live in an apartment building made people envious, because in winter they could poop indoors without freezing their butts off. His middle school teacher, Dong Wanhua, lived here. The key point was that her husband was a leader in the Forestry Public Security Bureau, specifically in charge of forest fire prevention. This is where we have to talk about the Forestry Bureau's setup. Every functional department had its own full team of officials. The Forestry Bureau had money, while the local government was practically transparent, with hardly any presence at all. Tang He carried the things upstairs and knocked on the door. It opened, and Dong Wanhua, a woman in her 40s, plain-looking but with regular features and a touch of a teacher's authority, gave a startled cry. "Tang He, what brings you here?" Smiling, Tang He handed the boar stomach to Dong Wanhua and said, "Teacher, I know your stomach isn't good, so I got you a wild boar stomach. Dried and steeped in water, it can help nourish the stomach. A few days ago, I hunted a black bear. It'd be a waste for us to eat these bear paws ourselves, and I figured my uncle-in-law could probably make use of them. Where's Junior schoolmate?" The child was sent to her grandma's place. "Good heavens, child, you went into the mountains to hunt a bear. Did you get hurt?" As Dong Wanhua spoke, she reached out to pull at Tang He's clothes. His clothes were tugged open, briefly revealing the wound by his ribs. Then he quickly pulled them back down. But inwardly he let out a sigh, feeling that he had basically come to take advantage of her. Teacher Dong was a strict, unsmiling, and extremely responsible teacher. Teachers and parents were almost no different in those days. Even in middle school, if a child deserved a beating, they got one. It was one thing if the parents didn't know, but if they knew the child had been beaten by the teacher, without even asking why, they'd give the kid another beating. But there was one more thing. No family's child could be dragged over and beaten for nothing. Especially in a small place like this, if something happened to a student, the teacher would truly step in. Now that he needed a favor, he had come to see this teacher Dong, and for the sake of all those times she had whipped him with the teaching rod until his whole body was covered in bloody welts, he felt fully justified in asking, Old who, stop ironing that ragged shirt of yours all day and get out here. My student's been thinking about you." When Dong Wanhua saw the injuries on Tang He, her gaze instantly turned sharp, and she called the man out of the bedroom. A middle-aged man in a white police uniform, with a big round face and a fierce fleshy look. The kind who didn't look like a good person at all, came out of the bedroom tugging at his collar. He nodded to Tang He, and when he saw the 4 bear paws Tang He had placed on the ground, he was somewhat moved too. "If you're coming, then just come. Why bring things? Have you eaten yet?" Tang He chuckled. "Not yet. If I come to my teacher's house and don't mooch a meal, it'd be embarrassing to go back. You little brat, get lost and eat." As Old Who spoke, he kicked Tang He. Tang He didn't stand on ceremony either, 19 years old, right at the age when he could eat and drink a lot. He drank a bottle of beidakang with Old Who and polished off all the food. Dong Wanhua brewed some tea, glared at Tang He, and went back to her room to prepare lessons. Old Hu crossed one leg over the other and said, "You little punk, bringing such a heavy gift, you definitely aren't holding in any good intentions. So hurry up and say it. I've got to go to work soon. Once I walk out this door, whatever you say won't work anymore." Tang He grinned shamelessly and said, "Uncle, look, I almost lost my life hunting this bear." As Tang He spoke, he pulled at his clothes to show the wound. Old Hu frowned. Everyone knows bear gall and bear paws are valuable, but getting this stuff means risking your life. Haven't there been few people all year round mauled by black bears? You must have eaten too much and had nothing better to do than provoke that thing. How about this? I'll put in a word with a friend and get you into the forest patrol first. The pay isn't much, but it'll be enough. Tang He quickly shook his head. "Uncle, spots in the forest patrol are precious. I'd better not make things difficult for you." "Then what do you want to do? Sit in an office?" Old Hu said irritably. Tang He said with a grin, "Uncle, get me a gun, will you?" Old Hu immediately relaxed. This was much easier than arranging a job, but he said nothing. In those days, getting a gun was easy, not to mention specialized agencies like the Forestry Public Security Bureau and the Forest Police Unit. Even the Forestry Bureau's log yards and militia at the forest farms had plenty of Type 56 semi-automatic rifles. But the problem was, getting a gun was easy. If something really happened and someone got shot dead, then responsibility would have to be borne. Just as Old Hu was hesitating, Dong Wanhua came out of the inner room and said to Old Hu, "Old Hu, get one for him. This child has been steady since he was little. He won't cause trouble with a gun." Tang He immediately seized the chance and said in a deep voice, "Teacher, uncle, I promise you both, if I ever dare point a gun at a person, may I never make it out of the old forest. You child, stop talking nonsense." Dong Wanhua said angrily, then glared at Old Hu again. Old Hu sighed, picked up 2 bear paws, glared at Tang He, and said, "Let's go." "All right." Tang He quickly trotted after him. When they arrived at the Forestry Public Security Bureau, Old Hu told Tang He to wait downstairs. Then, carrying the smell of alcohol all over him and the bear paws in hand, he went upstairs greeting people along the way and headed straight for the director's office. Before long, he came back down. Only the bear paws were gone. Old Hu led Tang He to the warehouse in the back, greeted the warehouse keeper, and tossed over 2 packs of Hanshan tea cigarettes. The other man took the cigarettes, cheerfully opened the warehouse and turned on the lights, then let them do as they pleased. The moment Tang He walked in, his eyes immediately lit up. He skipped right over the supplies outside, completely drawn to the rows of guns at the very back. There were all kinds of guns, but what attracted Tang He most was the most iconic one of all, the Type 81 rifle, which had just entered production and was still scarce at the front. Tang He immediately grabbed one and said pitifully, "Uncle, this one, just this one. Get lost, damn it." Old Hu snatched the gun away and put it back. "This gun was only transferred here less than a week ago. It still has testing duties. If I give it to you, my head will be on the line." Tang He grabbed a classic Type 56 semi-automatic rifle and hugged it tightly. "Uncle, this one would do too. In your dreams. If you change your ethnicity, I can go through the proper procedures and get you one. If you want to borrow one for 3 to 5 days, that's fine too." Tang He sighed. What he wanted was a gun of his own, not a borrowed one. He really couldn't understand how those ordinary people next door could get their hands on a Type 56 semi-automatic so easily. Pick through that pile of junk. Maybe it'll be destroyed one of these days anyway. It really was a pile of junk, Mosinagants, Arisakas, Hanyang 88s, even old sleeve-loaded rifles. Like a gopher, Tang He picked and sorted through the junk pile, and only after half an hour did he pick out 2 rifles. One was a Soviet-made Mosin-Nagant, and one was an Arisaka, both in very good condition. The bolts were fine, the rifling in the barrels was good, and the springs and everything else worked smoothly. Old Hu said with a smile, "You'd better not pick the Arisaka. 6.5 ammo is hard to find." Sigh, true enough. Old Hu gave Tang He 2 more boxes of ammunition, and just as they were heading out, Tang He stopped again. "Uncle, if one's being taken along, 2 can be kept too. Give me this one as well." Old Hu's face darkened. This kid was taking a mile after being given an inch, with no sense of limits at all. "I gave a few bear claws, and you want me to get you a light machine gun too, is that it?" Old Hu turned his gloomy face and was just about to scold Tang He. But when he saw that what Tang He was pointing at was a confiscated Gongzi brand air rifle, he immediately relaxed and simply waved his hand. "Take it. But I'm warning you, don't point a gun at people. There was a little bastard before who injured someone with this very air rifle and got sentenced to 5 years of reform through labor. If you don't want to end up locked away, you'd better be careful." Tang He quickly took the air rifle and wrapped both guns in a torn burlap sack. Then said with a solemn face, "Uncle, I keep my word. I will never point a gun at anyone." Seeing Tang He's serious expression, Old Hu felt somewhat reassured. And looking again at this young man whose face still held some youthful traces, yet seemed exceptionally mature and steady, the more he looked, the more he liked him. "All right. As long as you don't point a gun at people, if anything happens, mention my name. And if you get hold of anything good, remember to bring me some," Old Hu said bluntly. Tang He was instantly overjoyed. Though Old Hu was only a small section chief in the Forestry Public Security Bureau, he was a true local power. And while the authority in his hands was not great, his jurisdiction, without exaggeration, was no smaller than a small province. "Uncle, don't worry. I guarantee I won't cause you any trouble." Tang He gave his assurance again, and then Old Hu waved him off. As soon as Tang He left, Old Hu was full of high spirits. With one pair of bear paws sent out, the deputy position he had originally found somewhat difficult to turn into a full post was now as good as settled. Carrying the guns on his back and dragging his sled, Tang He headed back, and on the way he ran into the horse cart returning from the production team. After saying hello, he hitched the sled up and climbed onto the horse cart. Old Lu VI, who was driving, glanced at the burlap sack package on Tang He and couldn't help frowning. "Kid, are you planning to make a living patrolling the mountains and hunting?" "Yep, I even got the gun back." Tang He patted the sack, full of high spirits. Lu Lao Lu seemed like he wanted to say something but stopped himself, and finally let out a deep sigh. Some things, no matter how good the relationship between two families is, just can't be said outright. Crack. With a crisp snap of the whip, the chestnut horse trotted along lightly, clip-clopping all the way back toward the village. The first thing Tang He did when he got home was dig out a jar of bear grease, then start disassembling the gun, wiping it down, removing rust, and coating it with bear grease for maintenance. Tang Dashin sat on the bench by the window, smoking his pipe tobacco, squinting as he watched Tang He busily working away in delight, his expression darkening and brightening unpredictably. Tang Shu held a rag and helped wipe the bullets and apply bear grease, sniffling with a flattering smile, only hoping his second brother would let him fire a couple of shots for fun. While helping Tang He wipe the gun stock, Tang Li said with a grin, "Brother, Mom will be back soon from visiting around, so get ready for a beating." Tang He thought for a moment and said, "Little sis, hide the loom shuttle. That thing hurts like hell when it hits someone." Tang Shu, like an eager lackey, hurried over and hid the shuttle in the quilt pile, then ingratiatingly said, "Second brother, if Mom tries to beat you, I'll hold her back for you. Oh, give me a break. She'd flatten you too." Tang He said as he deftly reassembled the gun, pulled the bolt once, and dry-fired it at the wall. Click. The dry shot rang out crisp and loud, smooth as could be. Tang Dashin looked at the Mosin Nagant rifle, polished to a shine after being maintained, and couldn't help exclaiming, "Fine gun. What fine gun." The door opened, and Mom, Lin Xiu'er, came in wrapped in a cloud of foggy cold air. Tang Li gave her second brother a meaningful smile, then ran behind Tang Dashin and whispered, "Dad, are you going to hold her back in a minute?" "No. When your mom gets mad, she's scarier than a tiger." Lin Xiu'er took off her hat and gloves and tossed them onto the Kong, then saw the gun in Tang He's hands and the air rifle on the Kong, and her face immediately darkened. She reached out to snatch the one from Tang He's hands. Tang He hugged the gun and threw himself onto the Kong. "Mom, listen to me. Listen to your nonsense. Give me the gun." "No. If I give it to you, you'll definitely stuff it into the stove and burn it as firewood. So you do know that. Give it to me. Give it to me." No. Tang He clutched both guns and protected them with all his might, even more fiercely than if he were protecting a wife. Lin Xiu'er angrily turned to look for the shuttle, but couldn't find it, when a broom suddenly appeared at hand, and she grabbed it on the spot. Seeing his little sister hand over the broom, Tang He shouted, "Tang Li, just you wait. In the future, don't even think about." Ow! The broom came down on Tang He in a rapid flurry of blows, while he protected the guns and kept screaming miserably. Tang Shu looked at their mother, fierce as a tigress, and got so scared that he hid behind Tang Dashin, completely forgetting what he'd just said about helping hold her back for second brother. The broom was beaten until it fell apart, and Li Shu threw the broken broom aside, turned and went into the outer room, then came back carrying a firewood stick as thick as an arm. In the Daxing Enling area, firewood is different from firewood in other places. Usually straight pine, willow, or poplar, basically raw logs floated down from the mountains, cut into half-meter lengths, then split into small pieces for burning. Put them anywhere else, and they'd be top-grade lumber. Tang He shouted, "Mom, Are you trying to beat me to death? Li Xiu'er said through clenched teeth. Better I beat you to death than have you die in the mountains. Don't you know how your dad's leg got crippled? Old Tang, what are you looking at? You're strong, you do it. Old Tang held the firewood stick as thick as an arm and gave a bitter smile. Second son, think this through. An earthenware pot is bound to break by the well side, and a general is bound to die before the battle line. How can it be that only you can hunt others, but others aren't allowed to bite you to death? Of 10 hunters, half die and half are injured. I've never seen one stay whole and live to old age. Tang He jutted out his neck and stubbornly shouted, in this life, I just want to live a little more brilliantly. If one day I'm crushed to death by a bear or chewed to death, that's my fate. Old Tang let out a sigh and looked at Li Xiu'er helplessly. The child is grown now. You can't beat him anymore. Li Xiu'er was so angry that she sat on the floor and wept, cursing Tang He as she cried, from how disobedient he had been since childhood, to how he forgot his mother after taking a wife. Then she cried fiercely and said that sooner or later she would burn his gun. Tang He's head was throbbing with pain. He might as well have let her keep beating him. Tang He hugged the gun, jumped down to the floor, and carried his mother, who was still kicking and struggling, onto the calm. Helplessly he said, Mom, like this, you're a lot like when my grandma held my dad back then. Tang He's words instantly set Li Xiu'er off. She jumped up and started hitting Tang He, cursing as she beat him. How am I like that old woman? Would it not be like her if I just watched you go into the mountains to die? Tang He didn't say a word. He just took the beating. But that remark worked pretty well. Once Li Xiu'er was tired from hitting him, she lay down directly on the Kong and stopped cooking. Starved to death, the lot of you men. After Tang Dashin and Tang He cooked for a few meals, Li Xiu'er stopped making a fuss too. When men cook, they use far too much oil. No sense of how to run a household at all. Taking advantage of a light snowfall and while his mother was out visiting, Tang He quietly took the hidden Mosinagant down from the upper loft and brought 20 rounds of ammunition, slipped out of the house, found Du Liqiu, and quietly entered the mountains. Who knew what good stuff heaven might reward him with on this trip? Tang He had the gun in hand, and Du Liqiu carried a large wicker basket on his back, with supplies for the two of them inside. They crossed the river over the ice and plunged straight into the old forest. On the snow, all kinds of tracks crisscrossed. There were chicken, rabbit, and fox tracks, and they even saw plum blossom-shaped lynx prints. But in the deep mountains and old forest at the end of winter, it was utterly quiet, with only the occasional strange bird call, which made one's heart uneasy, as if stepping into another silent world. In the deep mountains and old forest, there were all kinds of prey, a great many of them. The premise was that you had to be able to find them. Four-legged ones are much more agile than two-legged ones, and better at hiding too. Only the most experienced hunters can spot them with keen eyes. Tang He was only a half-baked hunter, and Du Liqiu was just a pack mule. The two of them wandered around the old forest for 2 days. Aside from seeing a few pheasants, they didn't even find a single snow hare. The Mosinagant in his hands was a bona fide rifle. Using it to shoot pheasants was too wasteful. One shot, and being left with even half a bird would count as heaven's blessing. That air gun would be more suitable. It wasn't that they came away empty-handed either. They picked several bagfuls of chokecherries. The chokecherries that had hung on the tree all winter had naturally air-dried. The pits were large and the flesh thick, sweet with a hint of astringency, and tasted very good. The two of them ate until their mouths were stained pitch black, and their tongues were coated with a thick layer of raw, astringent fruit pulp. Eat too much of this stuff, and it causes constipation. Today, the two of them were probably not going to be able to take a shit. Du Liqiu brushed away the loose snow, scooped up the ice crystals beneath it, and held them in his mouth. After they melted, he rinsed his mouth and spat it out, then shook the empty wicker basket and said, Tang He, it's no good for the two of us to just wander around like this. If only we had a hunting dog. You can even get a gun, so why not ask the forest police to get a wolf dog too? Taking it into the mountains on a leash would be so imposing. Tang He could only respond with a bitter smile. A wolf dog is a wolf dog, and a hunting dog is a hunting dog. They're not the same kind of dog. Whether fishing or hunting, both require professional skills. In the Greater Khingan Range, more than 99% of the people were pioneer immigrants who came after the 1950s. There wasn't even a Japanese blockhouse around. The people who migrated there also had a clear goal: to develop the Greater Khingan Range and build up the Forestry Bureau, so there weren't many true professionals in fishing or hunting. Those who did dabble in it did so as a hobby, taking a shot in the dark whether anything was there or not, and usually farmed in peacetime. And in winter went into the mountains to check trap sets. without the spare time to raise and train hunting dogs. The two of them, empty-handed, had almost reached the big river behind the village when they faintly heard a dog's miserable yelp and people shouting. Tang He and Du Liqiu exchanged a glance and immediately ran toward the sound. After climbing a small slope, they saw in the snow below the slope a big yellow dog being flung into the air by a 300-plus Gene Palanzi, or legs splayed and hips thrown out, spinning 7 or 8 times before crashing to the ground. Before the big yellow dog could get back up, the wild boar snorted mistily, the bristles on its neck standing on end, and charged forward, swinging its 2 enormous Kalanzi, describing big balls, as it tore and ripping the big yellow dog open until its intestines spilled and its belly was torn apart. 2 young men had their cotton-padded jackets open and their dogskin hats flung off as well. One of them dropped to one knee, raising a small bore rifle, and with a bang fired a shot that hit the wild boar in the rump. Small bore was only a shorthand. Its full name was Small Bore Sporting Rifle, and the bullet was 5.56. As a training gun that had once been popular across the country in earlier years, its power was pitifully weak. After that shot, the bullet embedded itself in the pig's hide, and the wild boar was completely fine. It turned around and charged straight at the 2 men. One of them grabbed an axe and swung it down at the wild boar's head, but the blow missed, and he was instead tossed flying by the boar. The other had no time to chamber another round, and with a strange cry threw away the gun and dove behind a big willow tree. The 2 wanted to climb the tree, but the trunks in the woods were smooth, without even a single horizontal branch, so they could only circle the tree to dodge it. Having killed a dog and tasted blood, the Palanzi became ferocious, single-mindedly chasing the 2 and trying to tear into them. Tang He excitedly shouldered the Mosin Nagant, worked the bolt to chamber around, and, taking advantage of the distance opening between the men and the boar, aimed at the huge wild boar and fired with a bang. He was too excited. Despite being only a little over 30 meters away, he missed this shot. But that gunshot startled the single-minded big wild boar back to its senses. It no longer cared about chasing the 2 men and turned tail and ran. As it ran in a straight line, it instead gave Tang He a calm opportunity to take aim. Bang! Another shot. The bullet struck the wild boar right in the neck, and the 7.62mm rifle round burst into a spray of blood on the boar's neck, blasting out a hole the size of a fist, shattering more than half of its neck bone. The wild boar plunged headfirst into the snow and stopped moving. Du Liqiu jumped up, running while drawing his knife and shouting, "It really does have to be a gun. So satisfying, truly satisfying." Even in winter, game had to be gutted and have its entrails removed at the first opportunity. Otherwise, the stuff inside the organs would ferment and taint the meat, making it impossible to eat. As soon as Du Liqiu ran up to the wild boar, someone kicked him and sent him sprawling onto the ground. "This is the boar we hunted." When Tang He got there, he recognized them, Wang Laoqi and Li Zixin from the village. Tang He's family was very close with Wang Lao'er's family, had average relations with Wang Laoxi and Wang Lao's families, and Wang Laoqi was young, just a little over 20. Li Zixin was an 18-year-old hot-headed kid, and he and Wang Laoqi were birds of a feather, always sneaking around and stealing chickens and dogs, no good at all. Usually, them bullying people was one thing, but now Li Zixin had actually kicked Du Liqiu flat onto his ass. Du Liqiu was famously thick-headed, even more single-minded than a bull, and when something happened, he really went all in. Du Liqiu scrambled up and rammed straight into Li Zixin's chest, wrapped his arms around his waist and hoisted him up, then with a bang slammed him into the snow, sat astride his stomach, and started swinging his fists. Li Zixin was an 18-year-old sturdy young man, but Du Liqiu was 25 or 26, right at the age when a man is at his bravest and fiercest. After just a few blows, Li Zixin's nose was gushing blood from Du Liqiu's beating. "You idiot, Xiu, are you asking to die?" The hooliganish Wang Laoqi directly raised his small-caliber rifle and aimed it at Du Liqiu's head. Clack! Tang He worked the bolt, and an empty shell popped out of the chamber and fell onto the snow. Tang He picked up the shell casing and slipped it into his pocket, looking at Wang Laoqi with a calm expression. Wang Laoqi looked at the small-caliber rifle in his own hands. Compared with the Mosin Nagant in Tang He's hands, it was just a little pea shooter. Du Liqiu got up, shaking his fists and cursing, "Look at your stupid fucking face. You're boar my ass. If Tang hadn't fired, you two would have been feed for the boar by now." Li Zixin jumped up, still wanting to fight, but Wang Laoqi stopped him. Wang Laoqi said with a grin, "Tang He, thanks to you this time. Come on, let's drag the boar back and have some drinks at my place." Tang He refused with a smile and didn't even take the Ishima Wang Laoqi offered him, just dragged Du Liqiu away and turned to leave. Faintly, they could still hear Li Zixin cursing that they were too shameless to appreciate a favor. Du Liqiu turned back, ready to keep fighting, but Tang He held him back. Du Liqiu looked unconvinced, so angry that he cursed Tang He for being a coward and insisted on cutting ties with him. Tang He just smiled and kept hold of Du Liqiu without explaining. If his memory was right, the hard crackdown would begin around the middle of this year, and in 84, that is, next year. Something big enough to be talked about for decades would happen in Wonyu village. In town, Wang Laoqi would force himself on a young girl under the pretense of dating her, while Li Zixin stood lookout for him. Not only would Wang Laoqi be sentenced to death, he would be tightly bound and paraded around for public sentencing meetings before being executed. As for Li Zixin, the lookout who hadn't even gotten a taste of anything, he would still be sentenced to life. Get too close to people like them, and if the iron fist brushes against you even a little, you're fated to spend your whole life behind bars. Before Tang He and Du Liqiu reached home, they ran into Old Fan, who was coming back from Shandong village. Tang He called out, "Grandpa Fan," and Old Fan waved his hand and said, "Qin Dabong asked me to pass you a message. Come over when you have time." Tang He answered, went home and hid the gun in the upper loft. And when his mother saw him come back empty-handed, she shot him a fierce glare, though her face also carried a hint of delight. In her view, young people were stubborn and wouldn't turn back until they hit a wall. He'd gone and gotten himself a gun, but what came of it? He still came back empty-handed. After crashing into the wall a few more times, he'd settled down. Don't go running around outside these next few days. I heard the production team is about to start dividing up the land and the cattle and horses, and it'll be by head count. They'll be castrating the animals that need it. You help me draw one. My mom has good luck. Let's get that chestnut horse so I can ride it to drag the sled when I go into the mountains. I'll draw your grandma's leg of a horse. I'll draw back a big bull. Let's see how the hell you ride that." Lin Xiu'er instantly flew into a rage and grabbed a broom head, but it was new and she couldn't bear to use it, so she pulled over the feather duster instead. Tang He had never understood what use a feather duster had in the countryside. Its only use, it seemed, was for hitting people when the small bamboo handle used as the grip struck your body. It hurt even more than being whipped with a belt. Tang He immediately took off running. Better hide first. The moment Lin Xiu'er saw the direction he was heading, she knew he was making for old Lin's house, and she got even angrier. Who knew whether that fresh young cabbage had been snatched or not, but it sure seemed like her own plump pig was about to be lost. Tang He walked straight into the Lin family's house without the slightest politeness. They were practically engaged already, so there was no need to stand on ceremony. Tang He went into the room and took a look. Lin Xiu'er was wearing her favorite floral padded jacket and sweeping the Kong, her hips taut and round. And her legs were so long, and she was barefoot too. Her feet were really pretty. The moment Lin Xiu'er saw Tang He coming, she was so frightened that she hugged the broom and shrank to the end of the Kong, then hurriedly pulled her little brother over to shield herself behind him. Lin Dong, with his sturdy, tigerish look, stood guard in front of his sister, baring his teeth and brandishing his claws, which only made Tang He angrier. "Now you've got some nerve. What the hell were you doing in your previous life?" Tang He grabbed Lin Dong by the collar and hauled him to the doorway, then kicked him out the door. After that, grinning, he went over to the edge of the Kong and reached out to grab one of Lin Xiu'er's little feet. Lin Xiu'er was so startled that she hurriedly tried to pull her foot back, but Tang He had too tight a grip. How could she possibly withdraw it? Lin Xiu'er pleaded, "Tang He, why you can't do this? It's too much. The two of us are about to be husband and wife, so what's too much about it? Come on, let me look at your eyes. They've gone down, and those big eyes are even prettier now." Tang He's hand wrapped around Lin Xiu'er's waist, and their faces were almost pressed together. At such close range, this 18-year-old young woman had a soft, pretty face, moist and smooth, with a pair of big eyes slightly damp at the corners and beautiful Ejiosao. She looked like Sui Xiaoqing, only even prettier than that actress. Lin Xiu'er's face turned red in a rush, because Tang He was holding one of her feet with one hand, while his other hand had already deftly slipped into her floral padded jacket, pulled open the undershirt inside, and touched her tender, slender waist. "Why you're not allowed to anymore? You can only touch my back." Lin Xiu'er was so shy she curled into a ball, clamping her legs tightly together and using both hands to guard her chest. Tang He's hand lightly caressed Lin Xiu'er's smooth waist and back. At this time, not many people wore bras, Usually it was just a tighter little undershirt. As for old women who had borne several children, they cared even less about such things. Going completely without support, and it was especially obvious in summer, just not much to look at. Lin Xiu'er was different though. That smooth back of hers, from her waist all the way slickly up to the back of her neck under his hand. Judging by that feel alone, being reborn in this life hadn't been for nothing. Tang He leaned close to Lin Xiu'er's slightly translucent red ear and murmured, "Xiu'er." Lin Xiu'er kept her head lowered, almost drooping all the way to her chest. "In this life, I won't lose you again." Lin Xiu'er only responded mechanically. She hadn't even heard clearly what Tang He was saying. "Xiu'er." Zhang Xiuquan's voice sounded outside the door. Lin Xiu'er was so startled that her face turned deathly pale in an instant. She sprang up with a whoosh, jumped off the bed, and kept tugging at her floral padded jacket, so anxious she was almost crying. Tang He savored the lingering feel on his hands and climbed down with a grin. Only then did the door open and Zhang Xiuquan walk in, her first glance going straight to sizing up her own daughter. And one look at her expression told her nothing good had happened. Then she looked at her clothes. Still okay. Auntie, you're back. Where's my uncle? He's over at old Medicine Bangsy's place getting some medicine mixed. Kid, have you eaten yet? No, my mom won't cook for me. Zhang Xiuquan shot him a glare. If I were your mother, I wouldn't cook for you either. Sigh, kid, how about? Auntie, what tasty food are we having at home? Tang He interrupted her. How about stir-fried shredded potatoes? Sure, I like that. Tang He said, glancing at Lin Dong, who was hiding beside his sister and making faces at him. Then let out a cold laugh, grabbed him, and amid his yelps, planted him headfirst into the crusted snow outside. Because of what happened in his previous life, he looked down on this little brother-in-law from the bottom of his heart. Lin Dong ate while sniffling and whining, and no one paid him any mind. In northeast China, there's no tradition of slighting girls and spoiling boys. Little brats are generally tough, and getting beaten is an everyday occurrence. After Tang He finished eating, Zhang Xiuquan kept such a close eye on her daughter that he had no chance to make a move. Since it was still early, he might as well make a trip to Qindabang's place in Shandong village. In the Greater Khingan Mountains at the end of winter and start of spring, there wasn't the slightest sign of spring. Gust after gust of cutting wind mixed with snow pellets hit the face like a dull knife scraping back and forth across it. And if there was so much as a seam in your clothes, that nasty wind would worm its way in. Tang He clutched his dogskin hat tight and broke into a light run to keep warm. Once he hunted another bear and sold it for money, he was definitely going to buy a bicycle. Shouting to communicate works just fine, but having to walk whenever you go out is really damn inconvenient. The road was a good one. The roads used by the Forestry Bureau to transport timber all being paved with gravel. And from time to time a big jiefeng truck hauling logs would roar past. The whole load was made up of huge round logs dozens of meters long, and the log tips swayed with the motion of the truck like the tail of a giant python. When a few little kids sledding on the road saw a truck coming, they quickly moved far out of the way. Kids around here know from an early age that if one of those log tips smacks you, you'll definitely croak on the spot. Tang He grabbed a little kid over and took the ice board off his feet. The ice board was made from planks from the lumber yard, 1/2 inch thick and 2 inches wide, with number 8 iron wire nailed around the bottom in a loop, then threaded with rope and tied to the feet. On smooth roads, it could glide fast and steadily, and those with good skills could skate on an ice board like skaters in a sports arena. Tang He's skills were fairly average, but using it to glide along these 7 or 8 li of roads still made the trip feel easy. Once he left the highway, the ice board was no longer any use, so he untied it, carried it in his hand, and entered the village. Qindabang's house was right at the village entrance next to the highway, and the deep barking of the mastiff served as a doorbell. Qindabang shouted, and the mastiff stopped barking, circling around him non-stop. But that ugly striped dog kept sizing Tang He up with a sly look, looking like it was ready at any moment to bite him in the crotch.